Okay, we are starting with indicator 4, day 3. I do want you to put these in your notes. I know that you do not have anything in your notes for day 1 and day 2 because we did those directly on your homework papers, and that's fine. But I do want you to put these 2 examples down. And since there's only 2 of them, start with just this top one. I would like you to actually write that example down, and then we'll work it. So if you're at home, you should still have your 3-ring binder. And you should still be taking notes on days that we take notes. And then, like we did 2 weeks ago, there will be random note checks where you will have to send in a video of your notes. So make sure you're taking notes in your binder every time there's a video. And I know it says example 7, it's just because it's day 3 and whoever put these together numbered them consecutively each day. So this is our example number 1. A 102-mile trip requires 8 gallons of gas. At that rate, how many would be required for a 235-mile trip? All right, a couple of things. So reviewing just a little bit from last week, we've had a couple of different kind of story problems so far. We've had just a basic story problem where, Joe the plumber charges $25 and then so much per hour, and we had to write an equation for how much he charges for his work. We had problems where we had, some number plus 5 equals 11, and we had to set up an equation, give a variable to the sum number, which we usually picked n, and write an equation and then solve for n. We had the ones like our jump start today where we've got a rectangle and we have to write everything in terms of w and then solve for the width and then plug back in to get the length. And then we also, last Friday, we had equations where we had 2 things and we wanted to know when they were the same. So AT&T and Verizon charges this per minute, and then this as a setup fee or per call, and then you had to set them equal to each other. This is a little bit of that, and I'll show you the couple of things I want to point out. So when you're doing the review for indicator 4, you're going to have to read the problem, and then you're going to have to ask yourself, is it a basic equation? Is it an equal, like they want to know when they're the same, so I set them equal to each other? Or you're going to have to say, is it like today? And so I'm going to give you some words to look for to help kind of tip you off that it is a problem today as far as proportions, okay? Because today is proportions. So 2 things I want you to notice. First of all is at that rate, okay? When you see the word rate, I want you to think proportions, okay? Proportions. And it wasn't really on there. It's not on here, but it's on the canvas. Indicator 4, day 3 is proportions. So when you see the word rate or at this rate, okay, that is proportions. And you're going to set proportions up a little differently than we've set up anything so far. And then also, if you read the whole blurb at once, a 102-mile trip requires 8 gallons of gasoline. At that rate, how many would be required for a 235-mile trip? Well, at that rate, could you possibly read that as at that same rate, right? Because they want to know if you have one rate and then at that rate or at that same rate. So when you know that something is you're comparing 2 same items, how did we set those up? We set them what? Last week. When we wanted to know when 2 things were the same, what did we do? Yeah, set them equal to each other. So at that rate means at that same rate it just talked about. So you're going to think equal sign. And then when you see the word rate, you're going to think proportions. And then let's read a little bit further into it. It says, at that rate, how many would be required? How many what? Gallons. So that means our unknown or our variable, because remember, you always decide your variable by the question. How many, or how many gallons, would be required at 235. So I know I've got everything. I know in my head it's going to be a proportion because I saw the word rate. I've identified my unknown by looking at the question, how many gallons would be required? Well, since that's the question, that means that's my variable or my unknown. So now I need to set this up, and I'm going to set two things equal to each other. So let's look at first, I want you to always, for all of the ones for today and then tomorrow, I want you to start out by setting yourself up a fraction. And you look at the two things you're comparing here. You're comparing miles and gallons. So you're going to set up a fraction with either miles on top or gallons on top, and I'll show you here in a minute, it doesn't matter. But I'm going to set it up miles over gallons. And I want you to write yourself, this is just your little kind of your note. You're going to use this for the whole rest of the problem. Miles over gallons. So, and we know that we're going to set two things equal to each other, right? We know that because we want to know the same rate. And we know because it's a proportion, we're going to have a fraction on this side and a fraction on this side. So now let's fill in what we know. Well, we've got 102 miles requires 8 gallons. And since I'm putting miles on top, I'm going to put 102 on top. And I'm going to put 8 on the bottom because that's miles over gallons. Now on the other side, I want to stick with miles on top and gallons on bottom. And what I'm comparing it to is this other trip that would require so many gallons, that's my unknown, for a 235 mile trip. Well, again, miles goes on top. So 235 goes on top. And then my unknown, that's a really bad 3. My unknown is the number of gallons that would take. I think I wrote it identical the second time. I did. All right, so we've got the first equation is miles over gallons, 102 over 8, equals, or we want to know when it's the same rate, so at the same as the other one. And then the other one is 235 miles, and that's the unknown, right? That's the how many gallons is it going to take for that trip. Well, now we go back to week 1. And how did we solve when you've got two fractions equaling each other? You solve with cross multiplication. And I'm always going to cross multiply my variable first because I like to keep my variable on the left. So G times 102 is just simply 102G equals. And then I cross multiply the other way. And I have 235 times 8. And your numbers are going to get kind of big, so you're going to use a calculator for these. And you get 1880. And then we want to solve for G. And we know to solve for G, it's attached by multiplication. So we're going to get that off by division and division. And so our final answer is G equals, so you're going to take 1880 divided by 102. And you get 18.43137. And I just wrote out. Now, this does not tell me to round to the nearest gallon. It doesn't tell me to round to the 10th or the 100th. In my class, if it does not tell you, your default is always going to be to the second place or to the 100th. So in this case, our answer would be 18.43 what? Gallons. Because that's what we solved for was the G. Now, sometimes it might tell you. Sometimes it might tell you to round to the nearest gallon or round to the nearest whatever. Or you need to ask yourself if it makes sense, okay? If we were doing something like ice cream toppings or building bikes, we know that it doesn't make sense to leave it at 18.43. But can you pump 18.43 gallons of gas? Yes, if you guys have ever pumped gas, the little thing goes and it spins and it goes to that. So you could pump that. Now, what if, and it doesn't, but what if the problem had said, if you had to round to the whole gallon? Would you round up or down? Okay, so if you only get 18 gallons, are you going to make it 235 miles? You're going to need that other 0.3. So if you had to round to the nearest gallon in this particular problem, because rounding up or down always depends on each individual problem and what makes sense. Well, here we would need to round up to 19 because if we round down to 18, we're going to run out of gas just shy of our 235 miles. Okay? But again, if it doesn't say right? And it makes sense that your problem can stay like this. So money could stay like this. That's easy. You can have money. You could have $18.43. You can have 18.43 gallons of gas. So think about what you're answering, and can you leave it as a decimal? If you can leave it as a decimal and it doesn't say otherwise, in my class, the default is just always 2 decimal places, okay? All right. Any questions on that? All right, let's go to the second one. I'll give you another minute to write this one down. This is your example 2, and there's only 2 today. All right, so we have John earns $350 in one day. At that rate, there's that terminology that, first of all, you know you're comparing 2 things that you want to know when they're the same, and rate tells you that it is a proportion. At that rate, how much money? Well, there's that question. How much money? So I know I'm looking for money. I'm going to use M for money. I don't care what you use. X, $, D for dollars. It doesn't matter to me. So how much money would he make in the month of October? So first, let's set up our base proportion or our base fraction. So the 2 things that we have here is we have what he earns or his money, and then we have days. So I'm going to put money over days. Okay, money over days. So that's my base setup. Every one of your problems needs to have a base setup like this that I know you're doing whatever. And I think in day 4, you're going to have like money changing hands in different countries. And I think one country calls it a rand. So you're going to have rand over dollars, or dollars over rands, or pesos over dollars, or whatever. Okay. So we got money over days. And now we know it's going to be an equals because we want to know at that rate or at that same rate. And because it's a rate problem, we know we're going to have 2 proportions. So let's look at the first half of the information we have. He earns $350 or money. So that's $350 in one day. And then it wants to know how much money. Well, that's the unknown, and that's the M, and our money goes on top. So on the other side, our variable or our unknown is going to go on top. So that means, okay, can you have more than one variable in a problem, or one unknown? Can you have more than one unknown in a problem and still be able to solve it? Could I have an unknown days and an unknown money? I can't, okay? When you have a proportion that you're asked to solve, you have to have valid hard data in 3 of the spots and a variable in 1 spot, which means there has to be valid data for this spot. But it doesn't give us another number of days. But it does. It gives us a clue. But what is our days for how much money would he make? What would our days be on this side? Where'd you get that? Good. October has 31 days. The first couple times I had students look at this, they said, we're not given another days. Well, you're not given another number, but you're given a clue. You're given a hint. And that hint is October, and the month of October has 31 days. So if you ever find yourself looking at a problem and you think it does not give me enough information, it probably gave you a clue, and you just need to figure out the clue, because it has to give you information for 3 of the 4 spots, okay? Because if not, you couldn't solve it. So now we're back to a proportion, and I always do the variable first. So I'm going to do M times 1 equals M. And then I'm going to do 350 times 31, which is what? 350 times 31 is 10,850. 10,850. $10,850 what? Dollars, because it's money. So in the month of October, John would earn $10,850. Now, I want to ask you something, okay? So, keeping in mind we used money over days, does it matter? Oops. Does it matter if I used money over days, but when Dylan set this up, he used days over money? As long as you keep, from the very beginning of the problem to the very end, as long as you keep it straight what's on top and what's on bottom, it won't matter, and I'll show you why. If you've got days over money, and you've got John in one day earning $350, and in 31 days you have him earning some unknown amount of money, when you cross multiply, you're still going to get M. And when you cross multiply this way, you're still going to get $10,850. So you will get the same answer either way. It doesn't matter which one you choose. The important part is this right here. The important part is setting up your fraction to where you are always going to have money on top, or you're always going to have pesos on top, or you're always going to have Judy's information on top and Sarah's information on the bottom, because every story problem is going to be a little bit different. But whatever you're comparing, you need to find a place for it, top or bottom, and then once you put it there, that's where it needs to stay throughout the whole problem. Day 4 is exactly the same. It's more proportion problems. So tomorrow for E-Day, and so for at home and in class, everybody's at home tomorrow, I will post a short video with some hints on your assignment, maybe some help setting a few of them up, especially some of the ones that are a little bit more challenging. So if you're working tomorrow on tomorrow's assignment and you get hung up, go to tomorrow on our little home page, and there will be an assignment that says indicator for day 4, more proportions. Click on that, and there will be a video in there posted that will help you with your day 4 work. And then, of course, today's video is posted for today's work, okay? On today's homework, you will have some of these, and then you will have some review from last week. So there's going to be some basic equation setups. There's going to be some so-and-so is the same as so-and-so. When are they the same? But since it doesn't say at this rate, those won't be set up with fractions like this. Those are just going to be like last week's something equals something. And then there'll be a few of the ones like our jump start, okay? And then on day 4, which is tomorrow's assignment, it'll just be all proportions, I believe. I don't think there's any review from. And on day 4, you're going to have, like I said, rands versus dollars. You're going to have inches versus, or tall versus wide. So just read it and figure out what you're trying to set equal to each other. And again, I'll post a video tomorrow with some help. Any questions? You had your hand? No, you'll just do your homework, and because what I'll do for tomorrow's video is I'll just actually pull up your actual homework assignment, and I'll just go in, maybe set up a few of the equations for you and kind of help you get a few things set up. If you have any problems tomorrow while you're trying to do the assignment, I am here from 7:45 until 3:30, just like any other day. So please shoot me an email. I'll be happy to do a phone call, a quick video, Google Meets, video call, whatever it takes to help you. Or if it's just simple through an email, I can't figure out how to set up number 3, I'll probably just set it up for you and shoot you a picture of how to set it up. Okay? So if you get stuck, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. All right? Any questions? All right. For those of you at home, go ahead and pull up the assignment, complete it on Cami, and once you've shown all your work, go ahead and submit it through Cami and let me know if you have any questions.